Hello, everyone. It's Man United inside again. Chris Wheeler asked all about Reds now. Let us hear. What is the latest regarding United's long injury list? Can we expect some to be back soon? Chris Wheeler. Yes. Casemiro was close for the derby and could be back tonight. Wan-Bissaka is back in full training for the first time since mid-September, so we should see him soon too. Shaw possibly towards the end of the month and maybe Malaysia too. As I mentioned earlier, it would be a surprise if Martinez is back before the end of the year. You say long injury list, and clearly United have suffered more than most this season. But we shouldn't exaggerate too much. Of the long-term absentees, only Martinez and Shaw would walk into this team. Wan-Bissaka at a push. The absences of Sancho and Antony haven't helped either, but it could have been a lot worse. Are there any updates on Sir Jim Ratcliffe's potential investment into the club? Chris Wheeler. No, it's still being sorted out behind the scenes. We've reached the point that many suspected we would. For example, Joel and Avram Glazer rejecting a full sale and accepting investment to pay off the other siblings, so it would be a surprise if it didn't go through now. Ratcliffe's flexibility has got him through the door, and hopefully he will have control of the football operation sooner rather than later. In that sense, it's probably an even more complicated deal than simply a 100% sale to Sheikh Jassim, so we'll have to be patient, unfortunately. On to the Newcastle game tonight. Ten Hag rarely makes wholesale changes, so are you expecting another strong side? Chris Wheeler. Yes, now isn't time to be taking liberties. The injury situation means he can only make so many changes, but Ten Hag would be unwise to tinker too much. The last thing United need 3 days after being embarrassed at home in the derby is another bad defeat that would cost them the only trophy they have won in the last 6 years. They need to focus on this game and worry about Fulham later. What has the reaction been to Rashford's post-derby night out from within the club? Chris Wheeler. The feeling at United is that he showed poor judgment, and they understand why fans would have a dim view of it. Unfortunately, Ten Hag didn't hold a press conference before tonight's Carabao Cup tie. He doesn't have to and rarely does, so we couldn't ask him. He dropped Rashford at Wolves last season for being 30 seconds late for a team meeting, so I can't imagine him being very impressed with the player hitting China White after another abject performance in the derby. It was a really bad look, even though it was pre-planned for his birthday. I'm not sure if Ten Hag will throw Rashford under the bus like he did with Sancho at Arsenal, but we'll have to wait and see. Marcus Rashford put in another below-par display as Man United were easily beaten 3-0 at home by Manchester City on Sunday, and afterwards went out to a nightclub. Who would be the possible alternatives to Fernandes? Chris Wheeler. Casemiro and Varane have been mentioned, but both have had problems with injury or suspension. Martinez is another, but we'll be lucky to see him again in 2023. So, yes, it's just outside noise and no coincidence. It has gone up in volume after the embarrassing defeats to Liverpool and City. It will die down again. Several pundits have questioned Bruno Fernandes being the captain. Is there any chance Ten Hag chooses to replace him? Or is it just outside noise at this stage? Chris Wheeler. I don't see it. Ten Hag stuck his neck out to strip Maguire of the armband and give it to Fernandes, who was the de facto captain anyway, so I don't think he will reverse it anytime soon. He knew what kind of leader he was getting with Fernandes, and went ahead with it anyway. Going back on that now would be embarrassing. Not least a real slap in the face for one of his best players. Is Gary Neville right when he says the problems run deeper than just the manager? Chris Wheeler. Of course he is. Neville bangs on about the Glazers too much, but he's got a good point. The whole structure is wrong at United from the top down. Absent owners, lack of big investment, and the wrong people in key positions. The top clubs should have best in class, and United simply don't. That said, it wasn't the Glazers who benched Varane on Sunday or sent on Mount at halftime, leaving no discernible defensive element in midfield. And it wasn't the owners who left Haaland unmarked for the second goal. You can't blame Ten Hag for everything. but he has to share some of the responsibility. What would it take for that to change? Chris Wheeler. The fans turning on the manager and the board is always seen as a tipping point, although at United, they turned on the board about 18 years ago. Chairmen get twitchy trigger fingers and sacrifice the manager. At the moment, Ten Hag still seems to have the fans on his side. He's been booed on 2 occasions for subbing Hodgland, but that was more of a personal issue over one player rather than fans turning on the manager. United have got some winnable games coming up. Fulham, Copenhagen, Luton, Everton, and they need to put a consistent run together. This one step forward, one step back can't continue. If they are still mid-table and losing 50% of their games approaching the end of the year, then the situation could easily change. What is the situation regarding Ten Hag's position at the club? Chris Wheeler. All the messages from inside United are that Ten Hag still has the club's total backing. After appointing 5 managers since Sir Alex Ferguson retired and spending 400 malars in 18 months under Ten Hag, you can see why they are desperate for this to work out. I don't hear any alarm bells ringing just yet. But we all know how quickly things can unravel for any manager, and particularly at a club like United. What did Gary Neville say the other day? It eats them alive. So I've learned to never say never. And, let's not forget, United's football operation could soon be run by Sir Jim Ratcliffe. I can't imagine him watching this and being impressed. New owners or investors are always a concern for a manager appointed by the old regime. First question. Are there problems in the United dressing room? Chris Wheeler. I don't think any dressing room is ever completely harmonious, especially when you have a start like United's this season. I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as it was before Ten Hag arrived, though, when the atmosphere bordered on toxic. Certainly the players have detected that there hasn't been as much unity as there was last season, and they have been trying to get that back. Also, one of the reasons Jadon Sancho wasn't happy was that he felt Ten Hag gives preferential treatment to Antony, and you get these little issues bubbling away. When you look at Marcus Rashford's body language, and even Antony's reaction to being left on the bench until late in the derby, you can see that everything isn't rosy. But it rarely is after 7 defeats in 14 games. In short, I don't see signs of a dressing room meltdown, no.